We go into what transpired inside court. It was also what happened outside court, and the level of interest from members of the public. And at some point, it also seemed as though that it was getting violent.
Well, good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Indeed, it was quite a tense situation outside court. As about hundreds of community members from the Saldanha area, Vredenburg, and those surrounding areas were outside the court, and they were there from early in the morning trying to gain access to the court. But later on in the morning, police cordoned off the road and restricted access to the court because, in fact, it's a very small courtroom and there's not a lot of space for people to go inside. But then, during the course of the morning, the tension started to rise, and there were clashes between police and the residents outside the court who were trying to get into the court. And, the tensions just escalated to such a degree that there were stones that were started being thrown at the police. And in return, the police fired stun grenades and tear gas to disperse the crowd and to bring the situation under control. But during those altercations, unfortunately, there was a police officer, a 29-year-old constable, who was injured after she was hit with a stone in her face. And she had to be rushed to the hospital to receive treatment. So just outside the court, in the build-up to this appearance of the accused in court, there was all this tension outside in the street right in front. So, yes, it was quite a tense situation.
Yeah. Speak to us about whether anyone has been arrested, and outside of the police officer who has been injured, were there any other injuries reported?
No other injuries reported at this stage. Also, no arrests made in connection with what happened outside. But the police and the provincial government community safety department and the police oversight, they have indicated that they will be investigating the situation that occurred outside. There's a case of public violence that's been opened, and they're saying that they will be going through the video evidence, the video footage that was taken outside the courtroom.
Okay.
Just to bring to book the perpetrators of that violence and the perpetrators who actually caused this injury to the constable.
Okay. This morning, the case started with 4 accused, but it ended with 3 accused. Tell us what transpired.
Yes, indeed. So 3 of the accused have abandoned their bail, and the charges were withdrawn against one of the accused number 4. At this stage, there was no evidence, there was no information that was shared publicly to tell everyone exactly why accused number 4 was arrested in the first place. And in the same light, there was no information that was shared publicly to tell us exactly why those charges or why the case was withdrawn against accused number 4. And they were initially arrested in connection with the disappearance of 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith. She went missing on the 19th of February, about 3 weeks ago. So today they appear in court, and they appear in court today for bail information. But after the charges were withdrawn against the one, there are now 3 remaining, and they are all still in custody. And the state said they requested the postponement for further investigation, and that will be to actually investigate further the whereabouts of little Jocelyn who went missing, and also to access and to investigate data with regards to the cell phone usage of the accused in the matter.
Was there any indication from Kelly Smith, that is the mother of Jocelyn Smith, whether or not she knows about the whereabouts of a child?
No. Today's court proceedings didn't even get that far. So today's court proceedings, it was just a brief appearance for all of the accused, and all they stated was whether they were going to apply for bail or not.
Okay.
So all that was stated today was just they will be abandoning their bail application, and charges were withdrawn against the charges that were posed against the 4th accused were withdrawn. But that was it. So no time for Kelly to even mention anything about the whereabouts.
Thank you so much for your time. Corbin August, SABC News reporter there on the Jocelyn Smith case.
So Sharon Officini was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Nedbank Just Invest account where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani, voiceman.
In Jalo, Mabel, you can earn up to 8.75% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 45 Rand from Pretoria to Midrand. It's for our clever who turn 5-liter bottles into workout dumbbells. And for the slim oaks who bring a home-cooked scuff team to work every day. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 45 Rand from Pretoria to Midrand Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
A problem shared is a problem half solved. Don't ignore mental health, emotional wellness, gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS, adherence to chronic medication, the COVID-19 pandemic, and various other challenges. Let us help you and your loved ones. Contact Lifeline South Africa toll-free numbers on your mobile phone, 0800 012 322 or 0800 150 150. Alternatively, WhatsApp 084 922 8808. Lifeline South Africa, mental and emotional health for all. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
20 minutes after 3 o'clock, in conversation next with Michael Bowman, National Chairperson of Action SA. The Independent Electoral Commission has confirmed that it will be investigating how the African National Congress settled its 102 million rand debt with the Ezulwini Investments. This is after Action SA approached the electoral body in terms of the Political Party Funding Act. Action SA is concerned that taxpayers may be footing the bill for the settlement through tenders and seek to ensure that the ANC has settled its bill lawfully. Michael Bowman now joining us on the line. Michael, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Why is Action SA suspicious following the release of the third quarter of the Political Party Funding Act disclosure?
Well, Aldrin, we were suspicious when the ANC communicated in a 2-line statement in December that the 102 million rand debt settlement had been settled with Ezulwini Investments, because it took place at a time when the ANC had employees protesting outside for non-payment of salaries. Certainly those suspicions rose when the disclosures for the third quarter came out, and it was revealed that the party had received 10 million rands in donations. It is obviously our view, and we believe a logical view, that a 10 million rand injection of cash into the ANC could not possibly have financed a market-related debt settlement agreement. We are concerned that South Africans are not getting the full picture here, including the reality that Ezulwini Investments is receiving state contracts in numerous municipalities in KZN, and the South African taxpayer may well be funding this debt settlement.
Mm-hmm. So which municipalities does Ezulwini have contracts with?
So they won contracts for event management services in Newcastle Municipality in KZN. And we have received further intelligence about other contracts that were awarded in other KZN municipalities that we will be releasing to the public shortly. It's very difficult to see these things because there's no central repository available to be able to see where a company has won tenders. But it appears where there has been smoke, there is indeed fire.
Yeah. And when will you be releasing this data? What else are you waiting for until you make it public?
Well, we need to get our hands on the official documentations. It's important when we level allegations of this nature that we do so on a factual basis. But certainly what is emerging very clearly is that Ezulwini Investments earns a considerable amount of money through tendering to the state. If that is the case, it is absolutely in the public interest to know what the terms of that debt settlement agreement were, to avoid a situation where the South African taxpayer is not paying it forward on behalf of the ANC.
Yeah. And do you know from the information that you received so far if those tenders were awarded prior to this dispute being lodged, or was it after?
It appears that some were prior and some were after. It looks like there's a long track record in tendering to the state. We will obviously release all this information all in good time. But I think the point also has to be made here, Aldrin, that we have a constitutional court that has determined that voters must vote with all the information at hand about how political parties are funded. And there's genuinely a concern now that while some political parties, I can't actually say among them, abide by the letter of the law, other political parties who are willing to fund themselves through corrupt measures, a crime that comes with a 15-year jail sentence, view the Party Funding Act as the legal equivalent of jail.
Did the IEC indicate to you how long the investigation would take?
They didn't, and there's nothing that prescribes the length of time they should take, but we will be engaging them to remind them of their obligations to the Constitutional Court judgment, which was to ensure that South Africans should go to the polls with information like this in mind. And we think it's reasonable to assume that in the 11 weeks left of this election campaign, this investigation can be concluded and communicated to the South African people.
Thank you so much for your time. Michael Bowman is the National Chairperson of Action SA. 0614-104-107. That is our voice note line. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. And our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Aldrin Sampear.
Why are people in life running after money?
Just a quick one, Colonel. So if I get on the scene and there's money that's floating around and I take that money, am I guilty of a crime? Or am I committing a crime?
Yes, you are committing a crime. That's not your money.
And it's just floating in the air.
It is not your money, Aldrin. It's supposed to be part of the money that was going wherever it was going or being taken back to the depot.
What happens if it floats into my car and I'm driving a convertible?
It's still not your money. As a law abiding citizen, you should take it back to the country.
It's wrong to assume that everybody is running after money. It is just that.
Hashtag SAFM BTH.
It is 25 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Dr. Tafadzwa Musarara, who is the president of the Grain Millers Association in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean government will soon be importing genetically modified maize as part of its efforts to reduce the effects of the El Nino-induced drought. Zimbabwe is currently battling drought, and it's public knowledge that the country's economy is not doing well. Dr. Musarara is now joining us on the line. Dr. Musarara, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. How bad is the situation?
Thank you for having me. The situation is, as you rightly put it, we are negatively impacted by the El Nino-induced drought. Our understanding is that we are at the epicenter of this phenomenon in the region. This has seriously damaged our crop this year, and we had anticipated this occurrence, and hence we commenced importing maize in October of last year from South Africa.
Yeah. So with the grain that you'll be importing now, is it clear as yet where it will be coming from and how many kgs you're looking at?
Our estimation is that from 1 February of this year up to about 31 August of 2025, where as private sector will require 1.1 million tons. The demand of milling is going to be unusually high because we are not only going to have supply to the urban areas, our traditional markets, but also supply to the rural areas who ordinarily have been subsistence farmers who grow their crops for their own consumption and also for resale. So this time they don't have that much to feed for themselves or even to sell.
Yeah. So where will it be coming from?
We have a number of source markets that we have lined up, primarily South Africa and the South Americas.
Yeah. Is it a concern, though, that in South Africa as well, we have been impacted by the El Nino, and there's an expectation that we could see low crop yields or grain yields this year or this season because of the impact of El Nino, and perhaps maybe even South Africa might have to import?
Well, I think the situation can be managed. Our last figures that we got on South Africa was that you were expecting about 14 million tons against a consumption of 10.5 million. That again gives you a surplus to enable you to export not only to your usual SACO countries but also to your neighbors Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. We need that. It's important that the regional net food position must be favorable, so that the situation is attainable all over the region. However, South Africa can also export and import on the Polokwane area and up to Johannesburg. You can be exporting to Zimbabwe, and your Durban area and the Cape can be also importing from America and South America. So I don't think the world crop at the moment is very good. So the world the current world maize balance sheet is positive. So our situation as a region can be well supplied.
Yeah. Does this also mean that for Zimbabweans it could possibly lead to an increase in maize meal?
Well,
the price,
in terms of the pricing,
yeah.
Well, we are trying to contend that, because for us as business, when the prices goes up, our volumes comes down. There will be definitely consumer resistance. So the region will be harvesting this year, and we'll be starting to harvest in the next 3 months. The price will slightly slump, and we aim to take long positions during that period. We have also lined up contracts from South America, so that we widen our source base and able to leverage that in terms of price negotiations. But yes, we cannot rule out a price increase. However, we commit that that will be well managed to ensure that the individual household will not be priced out of buying minimum.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Tafadzwa Musarara, who's the president of the Grain Millers Association in Zimbabwe. It's 3:30, time for the news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, eThekwini Mayor in KwaZulu-Natal, Mxolisi Kahunda, says negotiations with Union SAMU have resumed in light of the municipal workers' strike. Addressing the media in Durban, Kahunda says a memorandum was issued by the union on Monday, directing its members to return to work. Interviews for the new Deputy Public Protector kicked off today. Parliament's Justice and Correctional Service Committee will interview 7 candidates for the position. And NGO Sisonke National Movement for Sex Workers say they were hoping convicted rapist and murderer Sfiso Mkwanazi would be sentenced immediately following his conviction. Mkwanazi has been found guilty on multiple counts of rape and murder, theft and defeating the ends of justice in the High Court sitting at Palm Ridge on Gauteng's East Rand. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Let's see what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Aldrin. Good afternoon. Joburg, first up, a broken down vehicle on the N3 South between Marlborough Drive and London Road. That's enough to already push traffic back into Buccleuch. The N3 going south is heavy through Limbro Park. A breakdown on the N1 North after Allendale Road. So already looking at a backlog through the Buccleuch interchange. You should begin a slow trip up through Midrand. Traffic light issues on Pretoria's Transorania and WFN Como. There is some delay there. That's just on the southern side of the Dustwater Tunnel. Durban today going into Chatsworth, being held up by a Higginson Highway crash scene. It's on the Mike 1 Higginson Highway before Westcliff, so pretty much central Chatsworth. If you're driving into Chatsworth, that's quite a heavy queue at this. Cape Town today looks like an issue on the M3 South just outside UCT. So the traffic coming out of town, Nelson Mandela Boulevard, quite heavy out to Hospital Bend and then onto that M3 down through towards sort of Princess Anne and the UCT area. Also the M5 running north is looking backed up from the N2 highway, very slow up to the N1 Kubo interchange. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
And it's time for a sports update with Tumi Nkapele. Tumi,
Hi,
more
Aldrin.
drama at Safa House. The Hawks landed at Safa House the other day, and now there's a new development.
There's more news coming from SAFA. Former SAFA Vice President Ria Ledwaba has now been banned from participating in any football activities under the jurisdiction of the mother body in the country.
So it means every
Anything,
other football
basically.
Item, whether it is a friendly match, whether it is training,
anything,
nothing that's related
and
to.
remember, she's got a football club.
Yeah, was what.
So no.
So what does it mean for the club?
So I guess she'll have to sell it to someone else, or I don't know. It just means that, listen, they don't recognize her anymore. And you're probably asking yourself, why is she being banned from football? This is after she applied for both Gauteng and West High Courts to stop presidential elections back in 2022. Now, Ledwaba took SAFA to court, pointing out irregularities in the amendment of the Constitution during the Congress in March 2022, and she believed that it was aimed at favoring Dr. Danny Jordan in his bid to win the presidential elections. The organization has also suspended Solly Mhlabeng pending a disciplinary hearing. He also took SAFA to court. So it's a developing story, and we'll definitely keep you up to date with all the updates as they come in. In football, Mamelodi Sundowns coach Rulani Mokoena says that he's yet to make his mind up on whether facing Young Africans in the CAF Champions League quarterfinals later this month is a tricky fixture or not. Now, Sundowns will tackle Yanga, as they are known, over 2 legs, and Mokoena plans to use the upcoming international recess to make notes on the side that stands between them and a place in the semi-finals.
I've watched all the opponents. I've watched all the games in the Champions League, but I've watched as a coach, and not as an analyst. And now I have to switch. Unfortunately, I've got a nice FIFA break where my focus will be just on Yanga, and I will go as far back as I possibly can.
Well, still staying with football, Lazio manager Maurizio Sarri has resigned after a 5th defeat in 6 games in all competitions. Monday's 2-1 home defeat left Lazio 9th in Serie A, 7 points off the final European qualification place. They were knocked out of the Champions League last week by Bayern Munich, and Sarri joined Lazio in 2021, and he led them to 2nd place in Serie A last season, their best league finish since they won the title back in 1999-2000 season. Then in cricket, star Indian wicket-keeper batsman Rishabh Pant says that the doctors raised the prospect of amputating his leg after the serious car crash that threatened to end his cricket career. The 26-year-old is set to play for the Delhi Capitals in the Indian Premier League starting this month after a 14-month absence following the accident. He is also in contention for the T20 World Cup in the West Indies and United States in June if all goes well on his comeback in the IPL. In tennis, world number 1 Iga Swiatek eased into the 3rd consecutive quarterfinal at the PNB Paribas Open after defeating number 79 Yulia 6-1 and 6-2. The victory sets up a quarterfinal showdown against former world number 1 Caroline Wozniacki, and it is happening tomorrow. The Dane advanced to her first WTA 1000 quarterfinal since 2019 by defeating Angelique Kerber 6-4 and 6-2. Anything's off with athletics action. Emerging middle distance runner Karabo Mailula has shifted onto the upcoming World Cross Country Championships that are set to take place in Serbia on the 30th of March, and this comes after her 2nd place finish at the Athletics South Africa Championships. As the reigning ASA Cross Country champion, Mailula showcased her prowess with a commendable time of 34 minutes and 35 seconds, trailing behind the 5-time South African champion Glen Rose Xaba, who finished in 33 minutes. And anticipating her 3rd major international competition, Mailula draws inspiration from her performance at Marks Park Sports Centre in Johannesburg, confident that it will propel her towards success in Serbia.
Yes, I've been preparing my cross country, and I think that I'm ready to run cross country this year. As a senior, yeah, for track and field USA, I was running 21 kilometer in USA Fisu, and I came 15th, first South African. It was in China last year, and then this year I ran cross country in Oman, Southern Asia, and then I came first. This year I came first with a PB of 33. Yeah, it was 33.04. Yeah.
On that note, it's a wrap from us for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Kapele.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Did you know that load shedding only happens when electricity demand exceeds supply? Eskom's team of specialists manages the grid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to protect the electricity network. You can help reduce load shedding stages by continuing to use less electricity, particularly between 5 and 9 in the morning and evening when demand is high. Government and Eskom working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield. It's for the bozzers who switch off the geyser when no one's home. And for our clever who get that there's food at home means exactly that. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 40 Rand from Sandton to Rhodesfield Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Forthright and hard-hitting Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Sometimes you'll think he's personal in approach. Well, the guy is just doing his job. Hashtag don't take it personal. Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
It is 20 minutes now before 4 o'clock. We're taking your voice notes on 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. And our studio line is 086-000-2032. Coming up in this hour, we'll be focusing on the conviction of Sfiso Mkhwanazi on murder as well as rape charges. And this is following the murder of 6 sex workers. We'll be speaking to Megan Lessing, who is the communications officer of the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force, SWET. She'll be joining us in the next short while. And then after that, we speak to Ntabiseng Dubazana, who's the director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. I just need some clarity on why the court would ask, for instance, that an accused, or well, in this particular, not an accused anymore, but somebody who has been convicted to go for psychiatric evaluation after the trial, considering, of course, again, that sometimes you find that the court will call for, or somebody would call for a psychiatric evaluation during the trial. It's the first time, maybe it has happened before, where the psychiatric evaluation happens after the conviction, but it's the first time hearing about that for me. But we'll get Ntabiseng Dubazana to explain that for us. She'll be joining us at around 10 to 4. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Trucker here in the Garden Route. That gentleman from Zimbabwe must tell the truth, man. They took over their farms. They give it to the people so that they can have the votes. They took the farms. People build their houses. Now they're demolishing the houses that they give the people. Now they want the farmers to come back and start to do the farming. They must tell the truth. They chase the farmers. Aye.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. It's Edward. Aldrin, Mr. Tafazo should be honest with the South Africans and Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe has been importing maize from South Africa since January 2023.
Well, he did mention that during the interview.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and your team. Aldrin, please, man, I need your help, man. It's been a month. Every week, I'm traveling from Matosana to Pretoria, Masters of High Court. I'm struggling to get my letter of authority. There is no one day. The employee of that master in Master of Court, there is no one day. I don't know what's going on. Every time I meet security there in reception, there is no one there. And those guys, they are receiving full salary. But we are struggling to get our letter of authority. I'm not only alone. Most of the people, they keep complaining there. But there is no way we can complain because there is no one of the officially in that building. It is only security.
Yeah.
I'm asking myself, we have crisis of unemployment, but other people, they are working at home, but they don't deliver. It's been a month. I'm struggling to letter of authority. Please, can you intervene to find out who's the owner of that court so that we can go where he stay? His place in Matlosan.
Okay, does anyone else have a similar experience? If you do, please do get in contact with us and then we'll see if we can escalate it. 0614-104-1807, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Convicted murderer and rapist Fiso Mkhwanazi will be sent to the Sterkfontein Mental Hospital for psychiatric evaluation to determine whether or not he poses any danger to society. On the other hand, the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force has welcomed the Gauteng High Court judgment and hope that it will to some extent contribute to the healing process of the family and friends of the women who lost their lives. Earlier on today, the Gauteng High Court found Fiso Mkhwanazi guilty of a murder as well as rape of 6 sex workers whose bodies were found hidden in his father's workshop in Johannesburg 2 years ago. We speak to Megan Lessing, who is the communications officer of the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. Megan, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. I wonder if you're listening to the judgment and what you make of what the judge had to say about the conduct of Fiso Mkhwanazi, who had argued before that the intention wasn't to murder them, but it was a dispute over issues relating to payment. And also we find the situation where he actually went to go and bury these bodies in his father's workshop.
Thank you for having us, Aldrin. We had an opportunity to listen to the judgment. It was a very measured judgment, I think, and like you said, we welcome that. In terms of we put a previous statement out when, his defense in the sense that he would say, yes, I murdered them, I murdered this woman, but it was never my intention to. I mean, if it could maybe have flown if it was just one case or one instance, but what we know of the case is that he committed these murders over an extended period of time, and we cannot deny that the circumstances around the stigma around sex work, because remember, 3 of the women that were eventually found murdered had open missing cases for months, at sex. It was from the same area, so there was never really a focus on these women themselves, but, the ones that were missing and the concerns people had about the women in the area that continued to go missing. But, no, it was never an excuse or a position that we supported that, that it was never his intention. We understand it was clearly his intention to murder these women because he got away with it so long.
Also, for me, what this case speaks to is the vulnerability of sex workers and how a sex worker can just disappear like this for months on end. And with this particular case, it is not one sex worker, but it's 6.
Definitely. I mean, if it was, from my perspective, I always thought that if it were not sex workers, then there would have been task teams and, operations, as to where is these women and what happened to them. But it never was the case. And I mean, it was even how the bodies were discovered. It was purely accidental. It wasn't even looking for these women. So, like in our statement, we also said, we understand that, we have been advocating for the decriminalization of sex work for more than 20 years. And because we base our advocacy on research, we realize, the research on gender-based violence and the vulnerabilities of sex workers are clear, and you can connect it even to the government policy on gender-based violence, the National Strategic Plan, that clearly says decrim sex work to address gender-based violence. So we know the vulnerabilities that sex workers face, but we also understand the importance of dismantling those systems. Those systems that enable, those type of violences to be committed against sex workers. And this is where our advocacy remains. And also, there is Aldrin, I don't know if you realize that there's very little focus on the actual victims in this case. Most of the focus has been on the perpetrator, his age, the circumstances, his mental health status, So what we are also trying to do and what we want to do going further is to focus, in a respectful way, in a measured way, on the victims of this case and the circumstances and their lives, before it was brutally taken away.
Yeah. How far is South Africa with the decriminalization of sex workers? I remember there was a bill that was published by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development for public comment. But how far are we?
So at this point, we have a commitment from the Department of Justice that the process, to restart this process, to republish a bill and to hopefully this time get it to Parliament will be prioritized in the next administration, so just after the elections, once Parliament has had the time to convene or at least reconvene. So at this point, we are holding the department to that commitment, and we're hoping that a case like this would refocus the energy and the commitment that the government made when they published a national strategic plan 5 years ago, both on gender-based violence and HIV in terms of health, that the decriminalization of sex work is the way to go.
Yeah. In the meantime, because we know that legislation takes time, and as you're referencing now that about 5 years ago, there were talks about a strategic report that's going to deal with this. And I remember even the then deputy president of the country, who's now the president of the country, was for the idea, seemingly that's what it seemed to me, to have sex work decriminalized. But what is your advice to sex workers currently? How do they keep themselves safe in the absence of legislation?
So in the absence of legislation, I think sex workers have been organizing. It's more out of necessity than, that the idea of, because the first initial women who went missing was reported missing by the sex workers that they work and live with, What then happens is that these cases it's not being taken very seriously. But we urge sex workers to keep doing this, to keep being in touch, to keep reaching out to our national 24-hour helpline, which is 0800 60 60 60, which you can phone any time and any day. But to keep tabs on each other, to organize, and to also keep focusing on the advocacy. I mean, we can focus on, and we should focus on, practical ways to keep each other safe. But if the systems and the structures does not support those efforts, we're going to keep doing this for years and years and years and years until there is a law, that doesn't sanction the violence against sex workers.
But right now, how do they do it? Somebody comes wherever the sex worker is. What communication tools do they have amongst themselves as sex workers to say that, hey, I have a client that has arrived, these are the client's details, or perhaps maybe even the car registration and so forth, so that the colleagues would have an idea where the person is going to?
So often what happens is, because sex work is a crime and it's criminalized in this country, is that sex work is being done, in we refer to as underground ways. You have to do it in secret, and that level of secrecy emboldens perpetrators like Sifiso Makonasi to be able to act and to murder and to violate. As much as sex workers do those things, those kind of precautions almost always are for when sex workers survive something where they can warn each other. But there's no way of knowing. I mean, we've all seen pictures of this guy. There's nothing, that alerts anyone that this is a violent and dangerous criminal. There's no way of knowing that this is going to happen to you. And once you are murdered, you've lost your voice, and especially if you're a sex worker, even the people who tried to advocate for the missing women found it futile. Once authorities learn this is the work that we do, they're no longer interested, in the well-being of sex workers and on the safety of sex workers.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. That is Megan Lessing, who is a communications officer for SWET. What do you make of this conviction? 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. And our studio line is 086 000 2032.
Did you know that load shedding only happens when electricity demand exceeds supply? Eskom's team of specialists manages the grid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to protect the electricity network. You can help reduce load shedding stages by continuing to use less electricity, particularly between 5 and 9 in the morning and evening when demand is high. Government and Eskom working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
The Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel. That six-cylinder engine will take you by surprise. Succumb to its powers. Experience the Mazda CX-60 3.3-litre turbo diesel for yourself. #SAFMBTH.
We're taking your voice notes on 0614-104-107. We'll be speaking to Ntabiseng Dubazane as soon as we get a hold of her. Still continuing the conversation about the conviction of Sifiso Mkhwanazi. Let's take your voice notes, 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Aldrin, good afternoon. About the Masters and what is happening there, it is a mess. You need to speak to Ronald Lamola. Apparently, he had a plan for the mess that's going on at the Masters.
Yes, which they announced last year.
So maybe he can assist. I cannot see this plan working. It's a mess. People are waiting for many years for a letter of authority. They don't answer emails. They just don't do anything. They're sitting with arms folded. So speak to Ronald Lamola about this. He knows exactly what is happening there. Teresa, Cape Town.
Yeah, we did speak to, I think it was Crispin Piri, if I'm not mistaken, who is the spokesperson for the minister about an initiative that they'd come up with to deal with that particular backlog. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the stories that we did this year and early this year and late last year to see what comes up. But I do remember speaking to Crispin Piri about this and the plans that they had in place. Okay, I'm going to try and find it and then share it with you.
Good evening, Adrian, and good evening to SAFM listeners. I also went through the same pain with regards to the behavior of Old Mutual. In 2012, I lost my mother. When it was time for me to go and make a claim, I was told that her policy had lapsed. I didn't understand because everything was there on her payslips. The deductions were being made there, including with other companies, but with Old Mutual, they simply told me that the policy has lapsed, and I didn't have energy to fight them, as I knew that they would take me from pillar to post. I walked away till today. Thank you. This is Luzu in the Eastern Cape.
So sorry to hear that. Actually, Elvis Presland spoke to the representative, Keliwe Ross, from Old Mutual early in the morning. So we'll play that interview just after 4 o'clock. On the plan that the Minister of Constitutional Development had announced, yes, indeed. So last year at around the 21st, yes, it was the 21st of November, we spoke to Crispin Piri, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, who had said the department had announced a a rescue plan which it has put in place to support the Master's Office as it struggles with the backlogs. And this includes providing information, kiosk, digitalization, address corruption, and changing the annual target for turnaround times for cases that have been concluded. So what we're getting from this is perhaps maybe the impact hasn't been felt as yet. Do you have a similar experience with regards to the Master's Office? Do get in touch with us, and then we'll try and see if we can get a hold of Crispin Peter once again to see what their take is on what's currently happening.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Well, we continue the conversation on the conviction of Sfiso Mkhwanazi, who has been convicted on rape charges as well as the murder of 6 sex workers. So what intrigued me was that the court had decided that Sfiso Mkhwanazi must be sent for a psychiatric evaluation. And as I said before, that I thought the psychiatric evaluations ordinarily would happen during the trial, not after the conviction. So what would the purpose be of having a psychiatric evaluation after the trial, after conviction has been handed down? Ntabiseng Dubazana is now joining us on the line, director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. So Ntabiseng, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So in what cases would the court say that after a conviction, an accused must be referred to a psychiatric evaluation, and this didn't happen during the trial?
Usually, good afternoon, Aldrin, and thank you for having me. Usually, it will be at a position where the presiding officer is not pretty sure on how it is they want to sentence the accused. So they would request a report from the psychiatrist would be assessing the accused to determine what kind of mental state that they are in at that particular instance, right? And if the report comes back and says that this person is, let's say, for example, a serial killer or is defined as somebody who's not mentally stable, then the court will have a light in how the sentence will be given. So in other words, we'll be referring to section 260 of the Criminal Procedure Act, subsection H, if I'm not mistaken. And then they would sentence the accused based on that. So it's an alternative sentence apart from a custodial one, depending what the report would do. But I do agree with you when you say that the assessment ought to have been done. Section 76, 77, 78 of the Criminal Procedure Act would have been applied prior to even the charges being put to the accused if the presiding officer had any question on the mental state of the accused, them not having what we call criminal capacity.
Yeah.
In other words, not
Oh, Ntabiseng, are you still there? Oh, shucks, we've lost her. Okay, we're going to try and see if we can get her back again just after 4 o'clock. It's time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, Union SAMU back in talks with eThekwini municipality, and Sudan's military rejects Ramadan ceasefire call. Good afternoon. eThekwini Mayor in KwaZulu-Natal Mxolisi Kahunda says negotiations with Union SAMU have resumed in light of the municipal workers' strike. Addressing the media in Durban, Kahunda said a memorandum was issued by the union on Monday, directing its members to return to work. The strike started on the 27th of February. 81 employees are on precautionary suspension for misconduct. Kahunda says over 1,800 employees have been given notices of misconduct. A further 88 employees have been dismissed. Kahunda also confirmed the death of a supervisor at the cemetery and crematorium department in Umlazi at the weekend, attributing it to violent acts of criminality. Despite Kahunda's assurance that SAMU is back negotiating, community protests continue across the city. Meanwhile, DA Premier candidate in KwaZulu-Natal, Chris Pappas, is calling for Mayor Kahunda to step down. Pappas says the lack of reliable access to clean water poses serious health risks for eThekwini residents.
We are incredibly concerned that there's an emerging public health crisis with no plan to solve it. We are calling for Mayor Kahunda to step down. He has overseen the collapse of the city, from water crises to electricity outages and now to piles of garbage on the streets.
Interviews for the new Deputy Public Director kicked off today. Parliament's Justice and Correctional Service committee will interview 7 candidates for the position. It became vacant when Koleka Kaleka was appointed as public protector late last year. The committee received 44 nominations for the position before cutting it down to 7. Celine Merrington reports.
Among the shortlisted candidates is Bonacheho Mukhaladi, who is currently an investigator in the Office of the Public Protector. She is one of 3 women being interviewed. The other candidates are Sekhame Tebaile, Tommy Bungazane, Azwidini Mabudula, Tseliso Tipenyane, Sipokazi Moleshe, Lendibe Mkize, and Marie Marriott. The Deputy PP is appointed by the President on the recommendation of the National Assembly for such a period as the President may determine at the time of the appointment, but not exceeding 7 years. The term may be renewed. The successful candidate will earn an annual salary of nearly 2 million rand.
NGO Sisonke National Movement for Sex Workers say they were hoping convicted rapist and murderer Sfiso Mkhwanazi would be sentenced immediately following his conviction. Mkhwanazi has been found guilty on multiple counts of rape and murder, theft and defeating the ends of justice in the High Court sitting at Palm Ridge on Gauteng's East Rand. However, the presiding judge has ordered he be sent for psychiatric evaluation. The matter has been postponed to the 8th of May for sentencing proceedings. Sukiswa Ngobo is the provincial coordinator for Sisonke National Movement for Sex Workers.
The law is the law. They chose to send him bio checking Mondo to see, since the crimes that he committed are following each other, it's one crime after the other. So maybe they feel he needs to be checked first, maybe so that they can judge him accordingly. But somehow it's not fair to people who are expecting him to be sentenced today.
The Sudanese Army and the rival Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, have vowed to continue the battle for control of the country, ignoring international calls for a Ramadan ceasefire. After recapturing the state broadcast on Monday, the Army chief said he would pursue the RSF everywhere. The paramilitary force is still in control of much of Khartoum, as well as the western Darfur region. The BBC's Will Ross has the details.
Both sides in this war are promising victory, but they're not mentioning the devastating impact this war is having on Sudanese civilians. Nearly a year after the army and the rapid support forces started fighting each other, 8 million people are now displaced, and they're not getting the help they need to stay alive. The charity Save the Children warns that a lack of funding and access means more than 200,000 children and mothers are in danger of dying in the coming months. It says food production has crashed, imports have stalled, and food prices have soared. So far, all efforts to get the two sides to talk peace have failed.
Recapping the top story, eThekwini Mayor in KwaZulu-Natal Mxolisi Kaunda says negotiations with Union SAMU have resumed in light of the municipal workers' strike. Addressing the media in Durban, he said a memorandum was issued by the union on Monday, directing its members to return to work. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And coming up in your sports, the Sawa Club gives an update on Mo Salah's fitness. Tiger issue an apology to fans after FUR defeat, and CSA salutes renowned umpire Marais Erasmus. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here we have heavy traffic getting out of Joburg through Midrand today. The usual breakdown just north of Allendale Road, and traffic's already parking back through Buccleuch and back onto the bike one to about Greyston Drive. So from Sandton up through Midrand, it is a heavy one. Roadworks again holding traffic between Clayville and Tembisa. That's the R21 South. If you're on your way to the airport, just factor in some extra time to get through that. Durban, the M2 South is queuing now. Umgina Road down to Spaghetti Junction. The northbound backlog has eased. It's been busy all day today going north, but that has sort of eased up and has flicked over to the southbound side. Crash on the Higginson Highway at Westcliff, so driving into Chatsworth, traffic remains backed up towards that scene. And Cape Town, an unusual queue on the M3. Looks like something just in front of UCT by Princess Anne. The M3 going south is heavy from Hospital Bend, and that's pushing traffic pretty deep back into the central area on both Nelson Mandela and Philip Kosana highways, leaving the city centre after hook into that M3 south through the Bend area. Also crash on Ford Trekker Road, causing delays from Jakes Curvell Drive going east into the Goodwood area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Did you know that load shedding only happens when electricity demand exceeds supply? Eskom's team of specialists manages the grid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to protect the electricity network. You can help reduce load shedding stages by continuing to use less electricity, particularly between 5 and 9 in the morning and evening when demand is high. Government and Eskom working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks and relax to your favorite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
After a convincing 7-3 victory against Bristol City, Brighton ladies now have a massive assignment to burgle maximum points from Man City ladies. The Seagulls can't wait to escape from their unpleasant bottom half position, but second place Citizens want to dethrone Chelsea ladies from the summit. This is the FA Women's Super League. Brighton and Hove Albion ladies versus Manchester City ladies on Sunday 17 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It is 9 minutes after 4 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we'll continue the conversation that we started just before we went to the news with Ntabiseng Dubazana, who is the director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. And this is on the conviction of Sfiso Mkwanazi, who has now been sent to a psychiatric evaluation. And the question that I had was around why send him to a psychiatric evaluation after the conviction. Ordinarily, it would happen during the trial. But as Ntabiseng has pointed out, that sometimes even it happens even before the trial to determine whether the individual does have criminal capacity. So we'll continue the conversation with her just after 10 past 4. And the conversation that we hope to have with Satu over the TPN report that has been released that showed that around 3.3% of teachers actually have criminal convictions. So we'll be speaking to Satu about it. We hope to speak to the Department of Education about this as well. But we will also play that interview that Elvis Preslin had with the representative of Old Mutual, Celiwe Ross, and this is following that storm that hit on social media and Old Mutual's brand, the reputational damage that the brand really suffered, but also the experience of the clients, really, the experience of the clients saying how they've been ill-treated. And you just heard now, but earlier on, from one of our listeners about the experience that he has had following the passing on of his mum.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4. 10 past 4.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 10 past 4. Coming up, we speak to Ntabiseng Dubazana, director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. So we're focusing on the conviction of Sfiso Mkwanazi, convicted murderer and rapist. Sfiso Mkwanazi will be sent to the Sterkfontein Mental Hospital for psychiatric evaluation to determine whether or not he poses any danger to society. On the other hand, the Sex Worker Education and Advocacy Task Force welcome the Gauteng High Court's judgment and hope that it will, to some extent, contribute to the the healing process of the family and friends of the women who lost their lives earlier on today. The Gauteng High Court found Sifiso Mkhwanazi guilty of the murder and rape of 6 sex workers whose bodies were found hidden in his father's workshop. Earlier on, we spoke to Megan Lessing, who is the communications officer of SWET, and we continue our conversation now with Ntabiseng Dubazana, director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. So, Ntabiseng, you were still explaining that ordinarily you would have this evaluation happen before the trial itself, as per Section 77 as well as Section 78 of the Criminal Procedures Act.
Yes, that's correct. Especially if there is any question on the mental capacity or criminal capacity of the accused, especially at the commission of the crime. But in actual fact, when we were on break, I decided to just take a look quickly at what the judge was saying. So it is not actually mental capacity of the accused. They want to determine whether the accused is a danger to any other person. So they're not using sections 260 or 77, 78, and 76, but what they're using section 286 of the Criminal Procedure Act. So that is what we call a pre-sentence report. So the evaluation is going to determine whether or not, if he's going to be imprisoned, is he going to be imprisoned in a high maximum security kind of prison or in the general public. So that's going to determine that, and then whether or not he would be eligible for parole at all as the matter as the sentence begins. So those are the things that the judge just needs clarity on before he pronounces on his sentence. And over and above that, the attorneys for the accuser also have to give their mitigating circumstances on behalf of the accused.
Can this report, then, the psychiatric evaluation, be used as a mitigating factor?
Yes, if it comes back positive on his behalf, in that maybe he is not, suitable to be put. Actually, no, and now I'm saying it out loud, it really will not work out for him. Because if it says that he is not a suitable candidate to be, there's a danger to society, in other words, then the likelihood of him being put in a maximum security prison is very high. But it may also, if it says that he is not a danger, he will still be sentenced to probably minimum life-term sentence, and he'll probably be eligible for parole. So that will be what will be mitigating in his side. But other than that, I don't see any other positive result that will yield from this report for him.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Ntabiseng Dubazana is the director and founder of Dubazana Attorneys. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
15 minutes after 4 o'clock. So Old Mutual has faced public backlash on how they have treated clients who are trying to access their policy payouts. The crisis first surfaced when Sibabatso Mulife took to social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, to share that the company has not paid out the pension that her mother undersigned. Old Mutual has apologized to the public and responded to the perspectives of angry clients in recent days. Let's now take a listen to the conversation that Elvis Preslin had with Teliwe Ross, who is from Old Mutual.
I think it's important, firstly, to understand that this issue is not actually about not acting on a court order. It has never been Old Mutual's intention not to pay. It remains our intention to pay. This issue involves a retirement fund, which in and of itself is a very highly governed instrument and has a lot of regulations that we need to consider. For example, it's governed by the Pensions Funds Act as well as the Income Tax Act. And so our ability or need to interact with a number of other bodies external to ourselves is important. along with this complexity is the complexity of the relational status or the legal status of the two parties that are involved in this matter. That is subject to its own laws and process as well. And so this has become a very complex case, not only legally complex because of the Income Tax Act and the Pension Funds Act, my apologies, but more so because of other complexities involving the claimants and their legal status and the process that needs to be followed. You will have noticed that Sibabatso did post on X herself saying, we had a successful meeting yesterday. We did offer two options that they need to consider. She's consulting with her parents and seeking advice, which is the right thing to do, and they will revert and come back to us on what they would like us to do.
But firstly,
so we have not yet paid, but that process is getting reached.
First, before we get there, kindly tell us about the nature of the complaint at first, and on what grounds was the policy initially rejected by Old Mutual?
As I said, it's a retirement fund that we were processing. So we essentially are a middle person in a retirement of a member, and those funds were flowing through to us. This is not an issue of non-payment, but rather in fully enforcing what it is that we need to do and adhere to the requirements of us from the Pension Funds Act and the Income Tax Act.
So I need to understand this. I want to understand as to why was it initially rejected, although it's a retirement fund. Why was it initially rejected, and was that explained to the complainant?
Yes, it hasn't been rejected. It has been an issue of how do we get it fulfilled and requirements that are needed on the other side, on the other party's side to fulfill, and that has been the challenge.
So let's get back to the family meeting you had. You said it was a successful meeting. What agreement was then reached, and what is the company's approach to resolving such disputes in future?
Yes, we had a successful meeting yesterday, and in that meeting, two options were presented to the family and the legal representative to consider, each of them having their pros and cons and timing considerations that they need to go away and think about, and then advise us which option they choose, and then we'll then have to start the process of getting to unwinding and paying out on the actual retirement fund itself.
How did it get here, where the complainant first had to go to social media before Old Mutual could act?
Yeah, it certainly is unfortunate, and I can appreciate that Ms. Molifi reached a point of frustration with us. The process most likely felt very long and protracted, and this, as I mentioned, is an extremely complex case, and so has taken a while, involving courts, etc., because there is a matter between individuals that are involved here. It remains critically important to us as Old Mutual to protect the personal information of the people involved and the complexity of the matter. That we cannot discuss. And the family appreciates that, and we certainly do, and will continue to do so.
How does Old Mutual plan now to address the growing calls from consumers to move their policies to alternative financial service providers?
The comments that are posted on X and the number of comments we received even through interviews and other measures or mediums are not lost on us. Elvis, they're not lost on us. We're hearing, we're listening, we understand. I do want to say, though, that 9 out of 10 of our funeral claims are paid within 4 hours. 9 out of 10. When the claim is valid, we pay within 4 hours, typically less than 4 hours. Oftentimes, you do get the challenges in that 1 out of 10 situation where documents are not correct, people try to lodge a claim and don't have the right documentation, or incorrect beneficiary details, etc. It's important to appreciate that insurance is a highly regulated industry. We are subject to more fraud than people realize, where people will walk in and try to claim and erroneously claim as an incorrect beneficiary or state a death that hasn't happened. So it's important to have the right documents in place. When they are, we pay in less than 48 hours. Last year alone, we paid 14 billion rand in claims. Every single day, we process 30 million rand worth of claims. 30 million rand leaves our accounts to settle the claims of customers. And so we take this very, very seriously.
Insurance is about reputation and credibility. So how does Old Mutual plan to regain trust and repair that reputation, especially considering the impact of the social media storm on the company's bottom line?
Yeah, you're right, Elvis. Insurance is about trust. It's about a promise. It's about meeting a future dated promise in an unfortunate event. And we take that trust that our customers place in us very, very seriously. We have to. And so we're deeply concerned by what has played out over the last few days. As we mentioned in our statement, our initial priority is really to focus on the customer service process, making sure that where there are gaps, we are dealing with them as quickly as possible, particularly in some of the posts that were mentioned on non-complex matters that should be quite easy to fix. So that's a priority. And then just looking at other gaps in our processes that we need to prioritize and fix to be able to meet the expectations of our customers. The rest is to rebuild, as you say, Elvis. It is important for us to regain the trust that we've lost. And I would encourage our customers to stay connected and to watch this space as we build on that.
So, for customers or consumers that still is connected with Old Mutual, how should they go about dealing with such complaints?
Mm-hmm. We encourage customers to seek financial advice. Speak to your accredited Old Mutual financial advisor. That is the best starting point, particularly when you have a big financial decision to make or you need to process a claim. They will guide you in terms of the documents that are required, the process to be followed. Same applies, of course, if you're not intermediated. In other words, if you don't have an advisor, the same applies, and you can call through to our call centers and they will let you know the documents that need to be prepared. I think that that's important for customers and consumers to understand. Old Mutual intends to and will pay on your claim. As I mentioned, over the last year, we paid 14 billion rands worth of claims. Every single day, we process 30 million rands worth of claims. We honor the commitments that we have to our customers, and that is always our intention. When the claims are valid, they will pay, and they pay quickly.
People would always say when they call a call center, they are halted there. But what is the process from there if they don't get any satisfaction?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's important to make financial decisions guided by a accredited financial advisor. That's always best. But we also ensure that our customer service staff are well trained. They need to be knowledgeable and adhere to all of the various regulations that they're subject to. And we also just make sure that when claims are challenged, when there are delays, when there's documents that are missing, that we follow up as much as possible. That's not to say that things don't go wrong, Elvis. I don't want to paint a picture to say everything goes perfectly. That's why I said 9 out of 10 of these claims are paid within 4 hours. But there are instances when things go wrong. Sometimes it's documentation. Sometimes it is customer service.
Oh, well, apologies for that abrupt cut to that interview there. Elvis Preslin speaking to Keliwe Ross, who is from Old Mutual. Listening into the conversation is Ngeba Sihlali, who is Ombud Life Division at the National Financial Ombud Scheme, who is joining us now on the line, adjudicator in the Life Insurance Division at the National Financial Ombud Scheme. Ngeba, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and thank you very much for inviting us.
I want to start off with the Old Mutual saga before we broaden it up a bit. As the Ombudsman, have you received any complaints against Old Mutual?
Yes, we do receive a number of complaints about Old Mutual, and we resolve those complaints according to our process. But I must say that we didn't receive the particular complaint that you played during the background, so I have no knowledge about it.
Yes. It is something that happened quite recent last week that tweet from Sibabato went out. But from, again, the Financial Ombud Scheme, when something of this nature happens, because now it is public, does the regulation empower the Financial Ombud Scheme to trigger its own investigation without a complaint having to be lodged first?
No, not at all. We don't have a power to investigate a complaint which is outside our own processes. In order to enable us to investigate a complaint, you need to lodge a complaint via our offices, maybe by post, email, fax, or go to or fill the application form, which is available on our website.
Yeah. Okay. Would you be able to share with us the nature of the complaints against Old Mutual, and also, I guess, to be fair to Old Mutual as well, I guess they're not the only insurance company that you get complaints against.
Yes, indeed. They are not the only complaints that we get. There are so many, a number of insurers that we do receive complaints about. We deal with declined claims. Maybe those claims have been declined because the terms and conditions have not been met. Maybe the waiting period has not been met. Maybe the policy lapsed. We also deal with complaints due to the fact that there was a poor service on the part of an insurer. Maybe the claim has been declined due to the fact that the policyholder failed to disclose correct information at the application stage. We do also receive complaints about benefit values. If someone is not satisfied about the matured value, if that is an investment policy, we do also receive complaints about mis-selling.
Mm-hmm. And on the complaints around funeral policy payouts, would you say that that's the bulk of the complaints that you receive?
Yes, I think about 46% of the complaints that we do receive are about funeral policies.
Yeah. So what does that tell you about what's happening in the industry, the concerns that are raised by the clients, and maybe again from your own findings once you do your investigation, where do you find that actually the insurance companies are in the wrong?
Well, what I can say is that from our side, it seems that people, they do not understand the terms and conditions of their policies. They don't read them. Maybe they were not advised at the application stage correctly about their terms and conditions. Like, for instance, when you apply for a funeral policy, you must understand that there are waiting periods that are involved. And you must understand that you've got a duty as a policyholder in order to pay the premium each and every month. You must know the amount that you need to pay. So if you have failed to pay that premium, then the insurer will have a right to lapse the policy. Once the policy has lapsed, it doesn't contain any benefits. If you lodge a claim, it will be dismissed. If there was an application form and certain questions have been asked about your health or the health of others, like your life insurance that you wanted to insure, you must disclose the correct information. If there was if the details of the individuals that you want to insure, you must give correct information, because at claim stage, it may happen that the information doesn't correspond, and then the insurer will say, "Wait a minute, this is not the person that we insured." You have a right to demand that you must be provided with a policy document together with policy schedule, so that you go through that information. If some of the things are not correct, please phone them so that you correct that information.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Ngeba Sihlali is adjudicator in the life insurance division at the National Financial Ombuds Scheme on this matter relating to Old Mutual, but just a general overview of some of the complaints that they have been receiving, but also looking into the conduct of the insurance companies and what recourse you have as a consumer. 0614-104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. It's 4:30. Time for the news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, the Saltpike municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape say residents should prepare for yet another water shutdown. This is due to a major leak on one of the valves. eThekwini Mayor in KwaZulu-Natal Mxolisi Kaunda says negotiations with Union SAMU have resumed in light of the municipal workers' strike. Addressing the media in Durban, he said a memorandum was issued by the union on Monday directing its members to return to work. And the number of children around the world who die before their 5th birthday has reached a record low. The UN Children's Agency, which released the figures for 2022, said it was an important milestone. Greg House will have details on these and other stories at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a heavy run out of Joburg through Midrand today with the breakdown before you get to New Road. The back of the queue's all the way down around Grayston Drive on the Mike 1, and it also just means you'll wait to get off the N3 North and the N1 North from Rivonia through Buccleuch and into that N1 running north. Now, there's also been a crash on the N12 East before the R24 airport split, so delays coming off the N3 at Gululis as you line up to get past that particular scene. Also, probably maybe related, the N12 coming in from Ekurhuleni is quite heavy into Gululis, so bit of looking at the crash on the eastbound side as you go westbound, and there's also a breakdown on the N3 south at Van Buren, so you got some trouble getting off that N12 and into the N3 to go south as well today. Heading out of Durban, the N3 busy again towards the Paradise Valley split to Pinetown through the roadworks. Cape Town, a crash on 4-Tracker Road at Goodwood. That's just causing delays going into Goodwood Mall territory from around about Jakes Kervale Drive, and an earlier crash on the M5 south near Milner Road in Rondebosch, causing delays and jamming up the busy Kuburg interchange. From the Kuburg interchange down through Maitland, that section of the M5 towards Rondebosch stays heavy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, starting off with football, SuperSport United coach Gavin Hunt believes that the best way to challenge for a top 2 position in the DStv Premiership is to have a consistent team. The Tshwane side have been without some of the key players for the better part of the campaign as they juggle domestic and continental football. And following their 1-1 draw against log leaders Mamelodi Sundowns on Tuesday night, Hunt discussed his approach for the rest of the season.
Take more from the Dusky team. It's going to take, the good thing is, if you look at the squad, we need our best sort of 7 or 8 out every week if we can. If we can't, then we're really going young and there's a lot to learn.
Elsewhere, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp says that Mo Salah is ready to return to the Reds' starting lineup. Salah has been struggling with a hamstring injury that he suffered at the Africa Cup of Nations representing Egypt. He then sustained a recurrence of his issue coming off the bench in a 4-1 win at Brentford. And Salah has now made 2 substitute appearances, having been given 15 minutes to play. And Jurgen Klopp says that he's ready to play a full 90 minutes. In basketball, the hosts of Basketball Africa League Kalahari Conference, Cape Town Tigers, have continued to struggle in season 4 as they lost their 3rd game in a row at the Sunbet Arena in Pretoria last night. The Tigers went down 84-58 to Kalahari Conference log leaders Fus Rabat from Morocco in what developed to be a one-sided game as the match progressed, and Tigers head coach Forshim Ngwenya apologized to the public after their sloppy performance.
First of all, I'd just like to apologize to the fans, just South Africa in general as well, the people that paid their money and took their time to come and watch us play. I think we didn't do justice to all those people, especially in the second half. I don't think it's much of giving up. I think it's just the fact that Rabat went into the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th gear, and we're still stuck on K number 2. And so, part of it is just, things that are beyond our control, and part of it is just, effort. At the end of the day, it's 5 against 5. Once you're on the court, you're giving the effort.
On to cricket news. Cricket South Africa has paid tribute to veteran Marese Erasmus, a distinguished umpire who has officiated at the highest level of the game for the past 18 years. This was following his international retirement. Erasmus recently concluded his illustrious career with his final appearance during the second test between New Zealand and Australia in Christchurch that ended on Monday. Since making his international debut in 2006, the 60-year-old has gone on to officiate in a remarkable 82 tests, 124 men's one-day international, 43 men's and 18 women's T20 internationals respectively. Ending things off with tennis, world number one Iga Swiatek is through to the quarterfinals at the Indian Wells with a straight sets win over Kazakhstan's Yulia. Now, Poland's Swiatek needed just 1 hour and 12 minutes to seal a 6-1 and 6-2 win. The 22-year-old will next play former world number one Caroline Wozniacki, who beat Angelique Kerber 6-4 and 6-2. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
The SAFM University Debate Challenge is back. Join us for the 1-hour debate on This Week Today with Oliver Dixon from 6 to 7 p.m. on Friday, 15 March 2024 at the SABC Gqeberha Studios in Eastern Cape. Rhodes University will take on Nelson Mandela University in what promises to be a nail-biting debate. The SAFM University Debate Challenge is an independent and non-partisan progressive initiative seeking to develop confident communicators, critical thinkers, and empowered global citizens. If you want to attend the debate, you can email info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
It is time to get a market update with Markwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Markwe Fund Managers. Markwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. So looking at Growth Point's week interim results and also EOH as interim trading.
Afternoon to you, Adrian, and to the listeners. Yes, Growth Point. Remember, these guys, they own Val Mall, Pal Mall, Westville Mall, VNA, Waterfront. The guys own and manage a diversified portfolio of over 500 properties locally, which accounts for almost 56.5% of their portfolio, and internationally accounts for 43.5%. And the South African and the group vacancy improved to 9.2%, that is for the SA, from 9.7%, and the group improving to 8.5% from 9.4%, and the finance costs are up 17%, and that was mainly due to higher interest rates impacting the unhedged portion of borrowings. So far, they've only managed to hedge around 76.7% of their borrowings, and with the VNA Waterfront being a standout performer, and that was driven by the positive impact of increased tourism, and the guys managed to raise almost 340 million rands from new investors, and that was for student accommodation. Adrian, a demonstration of appetite that this niche investment asset class is attracting, and the group loan to value increased from 40 to 42, and that was due to the negative property valuations and also that increased interest rates bearing borrowings in SA. Total revenue up 4%, operating profit up 2.2%, basic headline earnings per share down a whopping 34%. And EOH, the guys that saying the challenging trend is continuing, and that's despite an improvement in trading and tendering activity in the second 3-month period. The challenging environment has led to a reduction in revenue. Continuing revenue is down 4%, gross profit margin down 28%, and the total headline loss per share is sitting at 12 cents a share. Share price dropped by almost 6% at the back of those news.
Tell us about local and international market developments.
And President Putin warned the West today that Russia was technically ready for nuclear war, and that if the U.S. sent troops to Ukraine, it will be considered as a significant escalation of the war. And we see that rising mortgage delinquencies will have a negative spillover on both property prices and consumer confidence, further complicating China's effort to try to boost household demand and bringing its economy on a more solid footing. And traders held on to the U.S. rate cut bets for this year, even after U.S. inflation came in higher than expected, and the relative sense of calm in the face of a strong print was kind of unusual, marking a break from what we know that what usually happens when the CPI gets to be released. And our latest survey by the SA Chamber of Commerce and Industry shows trade conditions remained firmly rooted in the negative territory in February. They are at the near levels last seen in 2020. Remember, that was just during the COVID times. We've just seen an improvement from the 28 points in January to 31 points. And oil prices are heating up, supported by the potential supply disruption after Ukraine attacked Russia's refineries, and also getting support from signs of strong demand and hopes that interest rate cuts are imminent. We see Brent crude is up 1.4% at $83, and the yellow metal firms as June rate cut bets are still intact. Gold is up 0.4% at 2166. Platinum is up 0.7% at 931. The DAX is up 0.1%. Food up 0.3%. CAC up 0.8%. With the S&P opening flat, but the Dow is up 0.4%. The JSE is up nicely 0.8%. With our resources doing most of the heavy lifting, up 2%. Industrials up 0.6%. With our financials up 0.1%. The rand firmed almost 0.3% against the US dollar. Is trading at 1860 and 2382 to the pound and 2034 to the euro.
Thank you so much. That's Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Just looking at the screen here on my right-hand side, it has the SABC News channel on. Breaking news, the Takatso SAA deal will not go ahead. The Takatso SAA deal will not go ahead anymore. It has been announced by the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, at a press briefing that is currently underway. We're going to try and see if we can get more details with regards to this decision, what informed this decision. Jeez. And here you had a situation where MPs were being told that they need to sign an NDA. And briefings to MPs and committees were done, quote unquote, in camera behind closed doors because of the sensitivity around the deal. And now the decision has been taken that the deal no longer goes ahead. The minister saying that SAA remains 100% state-owned. 0614-104-107. You can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 06002032.
#SAFMBTH.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. You're speaking to Tembinkosi Msimang at Dube Hostel. You forgot to ask that ombudsman guy one question. That when he said when you miss the payment, the policy can lapse. Then why do the policy, those insurance companies continue deducting money when knowing exactly that the policy has lapsed? Because they do continue for even 2, 3, 5 years deducting money. Then once you go to claim, then they will tell you about the missed payment of certain day. When you tell them, okay, on the 50,000 that you're supposed to give me, you can take your 300 and give me the remaining balance. No, they don't want to.
Yeah, that's unscrupulous. You must lodge a complaint with the ombudsman. So go and lodge a complaint with them, because if it lapses, if they say it has lapsed, because with some insurance company they would say that you haven't paid, their policy is about to lapse. Then they give another warning. Then the policy would lapse, but there is an option of reinstating. So there's almost like a grace period that they have, and then the policy gets reinstated once you pay the money. For me, it would be strange if they say that at one point there was money that you didn't pay, and after that for 5 years we've been deducting money from your account because the policy is still active. But when you go and claim, then they say no, the policy unfortunately is no longer active because of a month that you missed. Why would you be deducting money from my account every month for 5 years? After the so-called lapse of the policy? I think lodge a complaint with the ombudsman.
Hey, Aldrin, you know, when we have interviews in camera, especially in court, is when you are trying to protect a witness or you want to protect a child, you know. This thing of Pravin was not in camera. It was what we call ekasi. It was done Madala style. That's exactly what he did. And then he comes and he wants to resign.
Oh.
He did everything of SAA Madala style. Thanks, Spongy here.
Good afternoon, SFM and to listeners. It's Aldrin Sampear from Durban. Aldrin, with regard to insurance companies, I'd like to suggest to the companies, please ensure that your call center staff is well knowledgeable about products they sell. If the call center staff do not know about the products and they make the sale and cannot answer customers' questions or clients' questions, that's a failure on the company. It's already a negative mark on the company, and the call center is a main epicenter. So if the staff are not well knowledgeable of staff, it's a bad impression on any insurance company or company. Thank you.
Afternoon, Aldrin, it's Hamilton here. You know, the problem with service providers is they forget that their duty is to offer service to client. What's on their mind is they offer service to media, journalists. That is why they are always on the news every single month. A month will never go by without a service provider trending on X for poor service delivery. And then they use that opportunity to promote themselves on radios. So that's the biggest problem. They think they offer service to radios and not their clients. That's him at the end of it. Good afternoon, Aldrin.
Afternoon, Aldrin. It's Thompson Bloemfontein. I just saw on the news that Jacob Zuma has been elected as a candidate for president for MK party. So what I would like to ask, is it allowed by constitution to serve a third term? Because he served 2 terms under the ANC as a president of the state. So is it any limit to serve as a president of the state?
Yeah. There is a constitutional 2-term limit. No president can serve above the 2 terms. I'm not too sure around the technicalities of it, because remember that former President Jacob Zuma was essentially fired by the ANC in 2018, and that was before his second term came to an end. But what is going to bar the former president from serving or becoming a member of parliament is the provisions that are in the Electoral Act, that because he had been convicted, he will not be able or will not be allowed to, or is disqualified from standing for public office, at least for now. I think it runs for about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. But there was an explanation that was given by the IEC before. But you may have seen now from the leaked list of the MK party that he is actually on the list. He's number 1 on the list. And a bit earlier on, Bongi Nkosi, who is the youth wing leader of the MK party, said that former President Jacob Zuma is the presidential candidate and he will be on the ballot. Otherwise, there will be violence. If that does not happen, if former President Jacob Zuma is removed from the ballot or not included on the ballot, and if the MK party is removed because of the court challenge that has been lodged by the ANC. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Studio line is 086-000-2032.
Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Plus, you get 40,000 Rand cashback. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Visit your nearest Kia dealership for a test drive. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Did you know that load shedding only happens when electricity demand exceeds supply? Eskom's team of specialists manages the grid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to protect the electricity network. You can help reduce load shedding stages by continuing to use less electricity, particularly between 5 and 9 in the morning and evening when demand is high. Government and Eskom working hard to reduce and ultimately end load shedding.
FC Köln will put their best foot forward to grab maximum points on home soil to run away from the danger zone. Meanwhile, RB Leipzig enjoys every moment in the top half and want to keep climbing to the top. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. FC Köln versus RB Leipzig on Friday, 15 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Yeah, here it is. This is now in relation to former President Jacob Zuma's eligibility to stand for public office. The IEC had relied on Section 47E of the country's constitution, which prohibits the holding of public office by anyone found guilty and sentenced to more than 12 months in jail without the option of paying a fine. However, this disqualification under Section 47 lapses 5 years after the sentence had been completed, suggesting that should former President Jacob Zuma wish to stand for election, he can only be eligible in the 2029 general elections. And I think that this will break out. There's a storm that's going to come out of this, because what's going to happen is the argument is going to be that the IEC doesn't want the former president to be on the ballot paper, that the IEC is in cahoots with the ANC, and that's the reason why the former president is not on the ballot paper. But there's actually a constitutional foundation around who is eligible to stand for public office. But that's just my prediction. These things happen in politics, and I bet you that this is what's going to happen as we lead up to the elections. Remember that there's going to be a period where the public will be invited to comment on the people that have been nominated on the provincial and national list of political parties, as well as independent candidates, to raise their objections. And one of those objections that I anticipate is going to be the inclusion of former President Jacob Zuma on the list of the MK party. Actually, I was in the CBD a bit earlier on today, the Johannesburg CBD. There are posters all over of the MK party with former President Jacob Zuma's face on it. Some of those posters very close to Luthuli House as well. 0614-104-107, and you can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Well, it's 7 minutes now before 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Nothando Shongwe, who's an attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights in the Land, Housing and Property Rights Program. Our next guest helps us understand the objectives of the Upgrading of Land Tenure Rights Act and how this act was used unfairly to suppress women's property rights, particularly during the apartheid dying days. Nothando now joining us on the line. Nothando, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Afternoon to you and afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for making time. Let's start off here. Please explain what the Upgrading of the Land Tenure Right Act is and who it protects.
So when we speak of ALTRA, in short we say it's ALTRA, it's an act that was passed in 1991 to allow for the upgrade and transition of some land rights to be transferred to ownership. So these were leasehold or deed of grants that were granted to men back in the apartheid era before democracy. However, the problem with ALTRA is that in terms of Section 2, when this act was passed, only men because they are the one who holds this leasehold or deed of grants. Only them were able to go and register and make sure they get title deeds, because the act allowed an automatical conversion from their tenant land right to ownership. So that's their act. And who it protected back in it protected men, obviously, because as I've said, back in apartheid, women were not allowed to be registered as leaseholders, or in terms of deed of grants, only men were allowed. So this act automatically gave men ownership of homes, and this opened the floodgates of evictions, where men now will evict women because now they are the owners, where you find siblings evicting each other based on ownership and stuff. So this happened, and then we had a case where we challenged the section 221 of Ultra. We said that this section is unconstitutional because obviously it violates the right to equality. It doesn't treat men and women the same. So this judgment, we got it in the Constitutional Court back in 2019, where now the court says that Parliament needs to amend this act and make sure that it's fair and treats everyone fairly.
I actually remember that judgment. But what about the customary marriage as well as succession?
So now, with regards to customary marriages, so a customary marriage obviously is a marriage that is entered into in terms of customary practices, where we're looking at lobola. And in most cases, most people don't register their customary marriages. They only do the practice and they continue with their lives. This doesn't mean that when they don't register their marriage in terms of the act, the Customary Marriage Act, their marriages are invalid. They are valid. However, it makes it difficult now where, for instance, the husband passes on and now there's a house or there are properties or assets that needs to be distributed, where now the in-laws will come and say, no, but we didn't marry you, so you need to move out of the house and stuff. So for people to register, it later protects them, because now when you go to court, obviously it's all about proving what you are claiming. So the registration really helps in terms of that. And when you're looking at succession is the right to inherit. However, if now somebody dies without a will, it makes it difficult, because now that means their estate will be dissolved interstate. And then with this woman that now doesn't have a will and is not recognized by the family and is not registered in terms of the act, so she has basically nothing to show, nothing to use to prove that she is eligible to benefit from the estates of her husband. It becomes very difficult to make sure that they get what's due to them.
Yeah, and the point that you raise now, the question around who should inherit, and in the absence of a will, what happens?
So who inherits is obviously it's somebody who the person who has passed. If there was a will, if the person has passed on, obviously puts their wishes on a will to say who must benefit, and that makes the whole process very easy. However, without a will, this process can take years and time. Like, it's a long and tedious process, where now we need to look at the laws of interstate, where we need to look who's the surviving spouse, and who are the children, and all that. And then with regards now to link it to the marriage part, if now you cannot prove that you were really married to this person and all this dispute rises, it becomes difficult for you to inherit as the wife.
Then the question around what are family houses? There's a program that plays on one of the DSTV channels, Gugitila, and the disputes go on and on and on. And I come from listen to me speaking like I'm an old man, but from an era and a space in society where we've been told that in the absence of a will, it is the last born who would inherit the house. But what is a family house?
Yeah, and in most cases, it's not just the last born, it's the male last born. So women are not really recognized. So a family house, we will say, like, it's a house that is regarded or belongs to a family, and people can move in and out based on their circumstances. However, the problem with this concept, we all know it in South Africa, it's where you go home to perform some rituals or do something. And if you are obviously homeless or you find yourself stranded, you know there's home where I can go and find shelter. However, now, because this is not recognized, you cannot go to the DIS office and say, I'm here to register a family home. So now there's a gap in our law with regards to that, because now it's in terms of dispute, as you said, the shows that are happening, we don't have something to kind of use or that can back us up to fight for everybody's rights in the house. So as we speak, we are trying as lawyers for human rights we are working rather on developing a law that will recognize the concept of a family house where you can go to the DIS office and register a family home.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Nothando Shongwe, speaking to us there, attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights in the Land, Housing and Property Rights Program. And that conversation, of course, brought to you by Lawyers for Human Rights in the Land, Housing and Property Rights Program. It's 5 o'clock. Time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Gordon makes announcement on the SAA deal and a milestone in reducing child mortality. Good day to you. The Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordon's announced that the SAA Takatso deal will no longer go ahead. Parliament's Public Enterprises Portfolio Committee had been trying to get information about the deal. The DA had claimed that details of the deal were being hidden from parliamentary oversight. The minister addressed the media in Cape Town.
Whilst there was meeting of minds, so to speak, on some of the issues, there were other issues on which there was no meeting of minds. So late last week, which is what we put before Cabinet today, there was agreement that in terms of a clause in the old sale and purchase agreement, where by mutual consent this transaction could be terminated, that clause was put into action, and both parties have agreed, after we inquired about the status of the negotiations, that there was no clear path forward as far as the transaction with Takatso is concerned.
The Sol Plaatje municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape says residents should prepare for yet another water shutdown. This is due to a major leak on one of the valves. Kimberley and Ritchie will experience a water shutdown starting on the first week of April for 3 days. The upgrades, though, will go on for the next 7 years. Residents say they're frustrated.
Interruption of the water, it's a problem for us because of when a municipality switch off the water, when the water comes back, the water is dirty. So ever they do bring back the water or supply the trucks with the water, the elderly are the ones that are suffering most because of the young ones are the ones who are going and pushing the old people, whereby the old people then end up not getting the water.
The water interruptions is a serious problem in our area, in Kimberley as a whole. Now, when the water comes back, it is very dirty. And the problem is, like, we have children who are going to school.
Meanwhile, the Sol Plaatje municipality's Lucky Muihahi elaborates on the repairs to the valve.
We are now faced with a situation where we have a major leak in one of the valves gasket, which is giving in. It's unfortunately a leakage that we cannot address without having to stop pumping water from Riverton. Meaning it compels us to have a shutdown.
The mayor of the eThekwini municipality in KwaZulu-Natal, Mxolisi Kaunda, says talks with Labour Union SAMU have resumed in light of the municipal workers' strike. He says a memorandum was issued by the union on Monday directing its members to return to work. The strike started last month. The mayor says 81 employees are on precautionary suspension for misconduct. Over 1,800 employees have been given notices of misconduct, and a further 88 employees have been dismissed. He also confirmed the death of a supervisor at the cemetery and crematoria departments in Umlazi, south of the city, attributing it to violent acts of criminality. Despite the mayor's assurances that SAMU is back negotiating, community protests continue across the metro. The DA's premier candidate in KwaZulu-Natal, Chris Papas, is meanwhile calling for Mayor Kaunda to step down. He says the lack of reliable access to clean water poses serious health risks for eThekwini residents.
We are incredibly concerned that there's an emerging public health crisis with no plan to solve it. We are calling for Mayor Kawunda to step down. He has overseen the collapse of the city, from water crises to electricity outages and now to piles of garbage on the streets.
The number of children around the world who die before their 5th birthdays reached a record low. The UN Children's Agency, which released the figures, said it was an important milestone. The BBC's Steve Jackson has more.
UNICEF estimates that fewer than 5 million children died in 2022, roughly half the number from the year 2000. Improvements in child mortality were most notable in developing countries such as Malawi, Rwanda and Mongolia. UNICEF credits midwives and skilled health professionals for the drop, but it has warned that the improvements are precarious. Cuts in health funding could reverse the downward trend. And the picture is still massively unequal around the world. Babies born in Chad, Nigeria or Somalia are around 80 times more likely to die before their 5th birthdays than those born in Finland or Japan.
Top story: the Public Enterprises Ministers announced that the SAA Takatso deal will no longer go ahead. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, we hear from Ria Ledwaba's legal team who have responded to SAFA banning her from all football activities and Nedbank Cup round of 16 action this evening. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Electricity and refuse collection. This has led to widespread protests, Kaunda said.
Road, which is taking forever to clear. The backlog is all the way down to Corlett Drive on the Mike one, all the way up through Beclue and all the way to that new road exit. Also, a crash on the R24 eastbound near the R24 split is causing absolute chaos on the N3. There's some real problems getting off the N3 highway through Galulis and into that N12 eastbound. So, backlog of traffic, Limbro Park going south and around the cement factory if you're heading north as well. So, very heavy there. Also, worth a mention, the Mike 1 from Parktown all the way down towards the Nasrec exit, almost into Uncle Charlie's before you're out of that backlog today. Cape Town, the N1 out of town, looking fairly heavy out to the Kuberg interchange. The backlog starts around Baidendracht in the CBD, over the elevated freeway, all the way to the interchange. Coming inbound on the M1, you're going to sit from around sort of Sable Road to get into that Kuberg interchange and into the M5 South. And Albert Road onto 4 Trekker Road. That's quite busy today out through sort of Woodstock, around Salt River Circle and deep into Maitland territory. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Good afternoon, this is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BTH Airline. I'm your co-pilot, Aldrin Sampear, and I'm with you from 3 to 6, flying you through the turbulent airwaves. But the landing will be smooth.
So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
What a year, hey? What a year. And we only, in March. So we're trying to get a hold of any of the stakeholders in relation to the announcement that has just been made by the Minister of Public Enterprises that the Takatso SAA deal will no longer go ahead. And remember that the Competition Commission had actually given it the go-ahead, that the deal can go ahead, but there was a condition attached to it, which led to Lyft pulling out, or the owners of Lyft pulling out of the consortium. But then there was also the point that was raised, was it early this month or late last month, by the Auditor General, concerns around selling off state assets without the financials being in place and the risk of the state losing money because of a deal that could potentially be seen as not financially sound because there were no financials that were out. But yeah, there's the decision that has been taken now by the minister. He said that Cabinet was informed earlier on today, and by mutual consensus last week, it was agreed that they will no longer go ahead with this deal. So, SAA remains a state-owned entity, fully owned by the state. But do you recall going into this deal and trying to find a private partner? was the concern around whether or not South Africa still needs a national carrier, considering all of the bailouts that SAA has been receiving and its failure to make a profit. I think that question is going to come back again, considering that South Africa, well, the state, still owns 100% of this of SAA. So hope to speak to any of the MPs as well who have been following up on this case and hear what their reaction is to it. But I feel that it shouldn't end here. We should still find out what the nature of the deal was. Even though the deal is no longer going ahead, what were the discussions? What was the intention? And make that information public, because there was an intention to sell it, to sell 51% of SAA to the Takatso consortium. The deal is no longer going ahead. And remember also the allegations that were raised by the former DG of public enterprises as well. 0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. When we come back, we're in conversation with Mogoena Maluleke, who is the General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, and this is following a TPN Credit Bureau report that has found that 3.3% of school employees, including teachers, sports coaches, administrators and ground staff, have criminal records for offences ranging from convictions for murder, rape, abduction, theft, robbery, fraud, assault, drugs, housebreaking and serious road infringements. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Adrian. Good afternoon to the SAFM listeners. Adrian, I must really commend those representing human rights by ensuring that they actually initiate a process of upgrading the Act, the Land Tenure Rights Act of 1991, which was only accommodating male figures. Now it seems like it will also accommodate female figures. I must really commend that. It's a job well done. It's long overdue, but it's better done than not done at all. Sewanele Kubeka from Pretoria.
Afternoon, Aldrin. On the subject of house ownership, for women who got divorced to their husband that they were married to in community of property, and they as a married couple built a home in the Ingonyama Trust land, and when they got divorced, the men got their house and the women got no compensation for having have to leave the house, obviously patriarchy. What does this new clause or challenge in the Act imply for that situation?
Good afternoon, SAFM and fellow listeners. We are speaking to Zonkele Noke here in Promised Land. With regarding to the deal of SAA and Takatso Pravin Consortium, I was just watching it for myself that that deal won't continue. That deal won't continue. It was a criminal activity that they have done by the Pravin and his cabal. Thank you.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
It is 13 minutes now after 5 o'clock in conversation with Mogoena Maluleke, General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union. 3.3% of school staff were found to have been convicted of a crime or awaiting prosecution. This is according to the TPN Credit Bureau after running a screening between October and December 2023. Among the crimes committed were theft, damage to property, fraudulent qualifications, physical assault and more. Employers are obliged to screen their staff against the national registries of child protection and sexual offenders. The screening raises question on who is allowed to work in an environment with children. To help us understand this further, we have invited the Teaching Trade Union and the Department of Basic Education to discuss this role in creating safe environments. However, though, the department is not available to have the conversation today. Hopefully we'll speak to them tomorrow, but we go ahead with the conversation speaking to Mogoena Maluleke. Mogoena, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of these findings from TPN?
Okay, let me thank you and greet your listeners at home. And I must say that I am a bit tapped by the 3.3% of the staff. We're talking about more than 500,000 workers here, and therefore, when I look at the statistics and I compare it with the 3.3%, I don't find any reconciliation on those particular statistics. However, I am not saying that these things are not serious, because we know in terms of the law, in terms of the regulation, there has got to be those particular processes that we follow before a person can then be employed. And therefore, if this particular statistics is really credible, that will be shocking. But what we have from SACE is far less than that, what is recorded as 3.3%.
Yeah. What is it about the stat that makes you suspicious that it could not be credible?
Well, the 3.3% of the more than 600 staff members, because it includes our security, it includes our cleaners, it includes our caregivers, it also includes the school governing bodies, and it is impossible to go and have a scoping that includes the SGB, because these are parents and therefore they're not regarded as staff members. So if that is the case, then the 3.3% would be far more than what we know that is always been exposed by SACE and the ELFC. I mean, the ELFC has just said that they've sent 7 for this particular period, and obviously it's very far from that. I'm not undermining the veracity of these particular crimes that are being committed, because it doesn't matter whether there's one rape, it is a rape. It doesn't matter whether there's one murder, it's a rape. But I'm saying we need to be cautious about the statistics, because they do not reconcile, they don't match.
So are you saying that the stats could actually be higher or could be lower?
It's very low. The stats are low than what it is now. I think the researchers still have to unpack the 3.3%. Who is the stat really affecting, and how many people they have? Because if they say the staff, 600,000, it's impossible to have that kind of a research that you can conduct during that particular period, and then you are then able to then be sure that everyone that is there in education, of about 500,000 people, are part of that particular statistics. It's rather we are given the population of that particular statistics, how many schools they have done, and then in those particular schools, how many teachers were there, how many clerks were there, how many, and so forth. So it will be more clearer. But for now, it's not clear, because if you just generally say 3.3% of the staff, I am saying is an exaggeration, and that would be more suspicious, and I want to be very cautious about it.
Yeah, because in their statement that they've issued, they say the 3.3% consists of school employees. This is teachers, sports coaches, administrators, ground staff that have criminal offences. They don't make mention of SGBs.
Yeah, but if you talk about groundsmen, some of the groundsmen are not even employed by the schools. They're not staff members, and so forth. The coaches are not staff members in most of the schools that are in the rural or in the township schools. 100% of the schools in the township schools, if they have a coach, that particular coach is from outside, so there is no employee that is a coach. Former Model C schools, the coaches are also outside, but I don't think we should debate that. I think what is important is to then say the crimes that are being reported and that are being recorded are very serious, and therefore that should not be undermined at the end of the day. But I was just saying that we should be cautious about the statistics, because as I'm saying, how many of the teachers that we know are prospective job seekers, and then we don't have that number, and they're saying it includes the job seekers, So I am saying, how did they get the job seekers, and then how many are they, and out of what population are these particular job seekers that they have been, contacted, or they are getting those particular statistics from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and the others they are getting there. But the majority of the job seekers and majority of the workers that are there are not found there. So they must say to us the 3.3% is the cases that they have been able to be reported, and they found them in the register book, and not say 3.3% of the staff. That will be an over-exaggeration as far as I'm concerned. And that will then cloud our discussion.
Do you believe that SACE has this similar equipment or tools to be able to run such a verification?
Well, SACE does not have that particular tool, but SACE will base its statistics on the cases that have been verified, the cases that have been dealt with by the ELRC and dealt with by SACE. And those particular cases can be verified 100% and so forth. So those that have no cases and then they're only verified outside the system of SACE and outside any other system will only be when they are going to these particular schools and say that's a verification. And that's where the problem is going to happen, because I do not think they can cover 25,000 schools and 500 educators and staff that are there in that particular short period of time, even if they have got the best equipment on earth. Because you must remember that there are those who are not going to respond. And then we need to be given what is the margin of error of those who did not respond. So this generalization of 3.3% is very problematic, because we will end up even labeling the people who are not closer to these particular crimes that are committed or this unethical behavior that it is there. Yep. So then I was wanting us to discuss about these crimes that are being committed.
I don't think that this was a person-to-person survey, but being able to run a credit bureau check, apparently you are able to get that information as well, which means that it's all done electronically. You don't have to speak to any of the individuals, but the TPN is able to pick that up.
So, yeah, that's where the problem is, because then the population you are talking about is very small population. Hence, it will have 3.3%. Therefore, it cannot be general, say, the staff employed in our school. Yeah, it must be corrected so that we are dealing with that. That's why I say if you are going to look at the register that is controlled by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, then it's easier to do that. Therefore, you need to be given the population of that particular register, and then you can say quantify it and say maybe it's 1.9% of those people are teachers and others are staff members and so forth. That in a way we can have a better conversation.
Okay, but generally from side to side, do you find that there is an issue around the employment of, and now I'm going to specifically just focus on teachers, your members, who have been convicted, who do make their way through the system and fall through the cracks?
Well, it is possible until the time when there was a decision by the South African Council of Educators to then say anyone who has got to be employed must produce prove that they have not been convicted of any crime, in particular sexual conduct or sexual crimes. And obviously, from that particular day, we can say with certainty that the schools will not be able to employ those people. But therefore, if there are those who have been employed before, therefore, because they have not been verified, it's possible to find those who have been convicted of different types of crimes or misconduct that are there. So yes, there's possibility that is there. But obviously, just from the SACE perspective, there are those that are in employment, and then they are where the principals basically, like the private schools, some of the private schools who are not basically working with SACE per se, they employ different people who basically are not registered with SACE, and therefore you may not know whether those that are employed there have gone through the same process that SACE is prescribing for them to go through those particular things. And I think that's where there will be a gap, and then it needs to be addressed, because each and everyone who has to work with the children, work with our learners, has to go through that particular process.
Thank you so much. That is Mokoena Maluleka, who is the General Secretary of the South African Democratic Teachers Union. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to speak to the Department of Basic Education around this finding that has been made by TPN. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
A problem shared is a problem half solved. Don't ignore mental health, emotional wellness, gender-based violence, HIV/AIDS, adherence to chronic medication, the COVID-19 pandemic, and various other challenges. Let us help you and your loved ones. Contact Lifeline South Africa toll-free numbers on your mobile phone, 0800 012 322 or 0800 150 150. Alternatively, WhatsApp 084 922 8808. Lifeline South Africa, mental and emotional health for all. This is an SABC-supported initiative.
Digital television offers clearer picture quality, more free-to-air channels, all SABC radio channels, irrespective of where you are in South Africa, and much more. Gradual analog switch-off continues and will be concluded by the 31st of December 2024. Installation capacity has been ramped up to fast-track installation of set-top boxes to eligible indigent households. Hashtag Sichincha Ungasali, Chincha Ungasali, hashtag Go Digital. For more information, send a WhatsApp message to 0600 625 458. You can also drop a call or to 086 0736 832. That's 086 0736 832, or email support@centec.co.za, webchat www.centec.co.za, or Facebook Messenger @Centec Ltd.
Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
Good afternoon, SAFM and fellow listeners. We are speaking to Zonkele Noke here in Promised Land. With regarding to the deal of SAA and Takato Pravin Consortium, I was just watch it for myself that the deal won't continue. The deal will continue. It was a criminal activity that they have done by the Pravin and his cabal. Thank you.
Hi, Aldrin. President Zuma and President Mbeki did not complete their second terms. As far as I know, I stand to be corrected. If a president did not complete a term, it is not counted. This means Zuma served only one term. Same applies to Mbeki. He only served one term. If he wants to return and do a second term, he can do so, as far as I know. Peter Maila Machaba from Letswapa.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, news just in. As you heard earlier on, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has held a press conference on the status of the SAA Takatso Consortium deal. In the press conference, the Minister announced that the sale of the 51% of South African Airways stake has been called off after facing obstacles since its announcement back in June 2021. Just take a listen to Dr. Mimi Gondwe, who is a Member of Parliament and a member of the Portfolio Committee for Public Enterprises, and she's a representative of the Democratic Alliance. After that, we speak to Puteho Mujabile, who's an aviation analyst.
So as the DA, we're not entirely surprised that the deal has been cancelled because everything about the deal was pointing towards a cancellation. The deal was bound to collapse because of the secrecy surrounding it. You will recall that Minister Gordhan was at pains to explain to the committee that because this was a live transaction and it was governed by a confidentiality regime, he wasn't in a position to disclose some of the documents to the committee, the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises, until we, as committee members, had signed a non-disclosure agreement, and then later on it was, okay, I'll disclose the documents, but they cannot be disclosed to members of the public and the media. So we're not surprised that the deal has fallen flat, and from what we've read in media reports, the governing party was also concerned with the terms of the agreement, and Minister Gordhan at some point indicated that the terms of the agreement would be re-evaluated and renegotiated because the conditions were different. But that really obviously is not going to happen right now, and we're not surprised, and this goes to show that Minister Gordhan really needed to retire. There was no way that as the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises we could have exercised effective oversight over this deal, because it was shrouded in this veil of secrecy and governed by this confidentiality regime. And it's unfortunate because members of the public deserve to know. SAA is a public entity and it belongs to government and has benefited from bailouts, from Treasury. And so members of the public deserve to know because they're taxpayers. that contribute towards those bailouts.
Well, that is Dr. Mimi Gondwe, who is a member of the Democratic Alliance and also their portfolio committee, who's a member of Parliament and a member of the portfolio committee for public enterprises, a member of the Democratic Alliance. Phuthego Mojapele was listening into that soundbite. But Phuthego, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of this announcement?
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and to your listeners. Very interesting about some of the comments that Minister has made there. He said, if I quote him, SAA was a public entity, and therefore it cannot just be dealt with it in the manner in which it was dealt with. But the strange part of the statement that he has read out there was that all this time when we've been crying loud to say this is a public entity, he has always been refusing to share the information that we needed and how it was done. It's very strange that today he's using the same thing that we've always been saying, this is a public entity you need to share with us. So the writing was on the wall for a very long time, Aldrin. It was on the wall. This deal has collapsed almost 2 years ago. There's not been a deal, to be honest with you. SAA is flying on its own, and it's going to continue to fly on its own. They've been making arrangements and plans on their own without staccato. So the business is going to continue.
And the new routes that have been announced?
Yes, test route, it's going ahead, and they are going to continue operating with the 340, 300s that they've got, the old airplanes. It's normal. There's really nothing that's going to change.
But do you think that we should still know what the nature of the discussion was, considering that MPs were told to sign an NDA and that the hearings were done in camera?
Whether that would do any justice to what we want to achieve. All what we want at the moment, Aldrin, is to find SAA a partner who's going to pump in money and be able to assist SAA to come out of the way in which it's operating, meaning that it's burdening the state with the bailouts and so on. So that is immaterial for me. We just need the new partners that will pump in the money and get SAA to where it belongs.
Thank you so much for your time. Phuthego Mojapele, aviation analyst. 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. It's a minute after 5:30. Time for the news headlines.
The Public Enterprises Minister says the deal with equity partner Takatsa Consortium to buy a majority shareholding in SAA has been called off. The Sol Plaatje municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape says residents should prepare for yet another water shutdown. And Lithuania has blamed Russia for a brutal assault and a close aid to late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the Mike 1 N1 getting out of Joburg through Midrand. It's a stationary vehicle at the new road exit, which is taking absolutely an eternity to clear away. It's been there all drive time. Traffic remains heavy from Corler Drive. The N3 is pretty bad as well, queuing from Lindbro Park, from Marlborough Drive all the way down through Galulis and deep into Germiston. The N3 North is under pressure as well from Cement Factory coming up into Galulis. Half the problem there is a crash on the N12 east of the Galulis interchange area, so a lot of congestion there. Also an extra 20-30 minutes to get up the R21 towards Pretoria due to a crash up by the sinkhole closures just north of Olifantsfontein Road. Durban keeping it fairly tidy this afternoon. A couple of delays here and there, but nowhere near what you might be used to. And Cape Town, the N1 is a standout inbound and outbound today. Very heavy coming out of the city centre. Pretty badly backed up going into town as well from the N7 through to the M5 Coburg interchange. And the CBD, the sort of western side of the CBD, is gridlocked. Bait-and-Truck outbound. Helen Suzman inbound. Exits from the waterfront high-level road between Bait-and-Truck and sort of Ocean View Drive. Quite heavy in and out of town that side as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
In your sports this hour, there's some Nedbank Cup action tonight. The University of Pretoria face Morocco Swallows. That's at 7 p.m. And Amatax have proved to be no pushovers in the Guyana Cup competition. And midfielder Sinking Betty says that they know their intentions and they are very clear.
No, for us, it's we're looking to go all the way. God willingly, going all the way to the finals. That would be a great thing. I mean, University of Pretoria has done it before, and we also saying let's push it, let's do our best, and see where we can finish. I mean, also it kind of helps us to keep the momentum. You know, I mean, if you look now, we're only going to play again on the in April. We have like 2 weekends where there's no matches, so that can be a problem if your team goes 2 weekends without playing any match. So I think this NetBank, it's helping us to just keep our momentum and keep competing.
Meanwhile, former SAFA Vice President Ria Ledwaba's legal team has requested SAFA to withdraw their letter stating that Ledwaba has been banned from participating in any football activities under the due restriction of the mother body in the country. And this is after she applied to both Gauteng and West High Courts to stop presidential elections back in 2022. Ledwaba took SAFA to court, pointing out irregularities in the amendment of the Constitution during their Congress in March 2022. She believed that it was aimed at favoring Dr. Danny Jordaan in his bid to win the presidential election. She lost the case, however, she has since appealed. And just to tell us a bit more about this, we are joined by Vernon Simo from her legal team. Mr. Simo, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us.
I mean, obviously, we would have loved to talk to Ria, but unfortunately, because there's an ongoing case, what was her first reaction when she got the letter?
Look, she was very surprised for two reasons. The first reason being the matter is currently on appeal. And so, therefore, that process should be allowed to play out. And at the end of it, SAFA could then decide what it wants to do about whatever concerns they may have. And secondly, and more importantly, Ria Ledwaba has been a leading light in South African football and generally acclaimed to one of the best examples of our football administrators, untainted by any scandals of any sort. And so for them now to come and say she's a persona non grata came as a bit of a surprise.
I mean, non grata, that term, can you just explain it to us? What does it mean exactly?
Well, in simple terms, it's a person who's unacceptable in a particular environment, unwelcome in a particular environment, and that's what SAFA decided. Without affording Ms. Ledwaba any opportunity, to respond to it, or to in any way defend herself.
Did she not go through a disciplinary hearing before they came to this verdict?
There was nothing like that. No DC hearing, no notice, no due process whatsoever.
Sure. And, I mean, then does the NEC have the powers, though, to ban her?
Well, that's another question altogether. The NEC's powers are spelled out in its statutes, and it underlines due process. So before it can do that, there has to be a due process and a recommendation from a tribunal. But none of those things were observed. It was simply disregarded.
And I mean, you said that obviously you're waiting for the appeal to end. How long will this appeal take? And should the decision not be overturned, what are the implications for her, especially the fact that we also know that she has a football team?
Well, look, this decision of SAFA really has no real effect on her. Other than it being something that attempts to discredit her. So it's really a standing, a reputation as a person, of integrity, of public acclaim that they are trying or seeking to discredit. That's what it's all about, really.
And if after 7 days they don't respond, are you guys going to court?
Well, we will have no option but to go to court and seek, the appropriate relief. I mean, we can't allow something like this to go unchallenged.
And just recently, we just saw the headlines or the stories about the Hawks raiding Safa House. Do you think this is somehow linked to that?
Well, there's a perception, I think, in SAFA that all of their problems come from Ria. But it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. Those issues that were reported in the media have nothing to do with Ria Ledwaba. Nothing whatsoever. And this is almost a pushback from the NEC to try and find a scapegoat somehow to justify what's been going on in the organization now for the past 10 years.
I think that's one thing I've been asking myself, is that the timing of it all right now, and you saying that it's got nothing to do with Ria. Have the Hawks reached out to her with regards to the current situation at SAFA though?
No, not as far as I know. They may, because some of the allegations relate to a period when she had served, in the NEC at that time, and they may want to ask her some questions, and she's happy to answer any questions that they may have.
Just before I let you go, Mr. Seymour, I know that you're the former president of SAFA Western Cape. Your thoughts on this Hawks situation and them raiding SAFA?
Look, I also served on the SAFA NEC about 10, 15 years ago. I was shocked and surprised. It's unheard of, that something like this could even be imagined. It suggests there's something very wrong in our football, that, that kind of action becomes necessary.
Mr. Vernon Seymour, thank you very much for your time. He is part of Ria Ledwaba's legal team, and as things stand, they have sent a letter back to SAFA asking them to withdraw this letter that is stating that Ms. Ria Ledwaba is banned from all football. And obviously, this is a developing story. We'll definitely keep you up to date with regards to this. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now, and that is it from my side. Aldrin
Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Afternoon, Aldrin. This is Magdalene from Bloom.
Liratodi, good afternoon.
Aldrin, how are you?
Let's hear from Tandisa joining us from Matlosano. Good afternoon.
Edwin, how are you?
Aldrin.
Who?
It's Aldrin.
Excuse me. My name is. My name is. My name is. My name is. My name is.
Aldrin Sampear.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hashtag SAFMBTH.
My name is what? My name is who? My name is what? My name is who? My name is Aldrin Sampear.
My daughter is loving Aldrin Sampear. Enjoy your show, man.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moya. Hi, Jimmy. Good evening. Welcome to the show. So, scams, financial scams.
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to me, and good evening to the listeners. Yes, actually, I thought this would be the headline for the show, and I thought this would be the biggest news to break in recent times. But as I've been chatting to you and preparing for my show this afternoon, something has broken. I put out a request earlier in the week to speak to Minister Pravin Gordhan around the SAA deal and potentially the privatization of parts of Transnet. And little did I know that I would never get that request, because we've just gotten confirmation, and has also been confirmed by Takatso as well, that the SAA Takatso deal is off. No longer going to be happening. We're going to try and keep an eye on that. We're going to try and get some parties or either party to speak on it. At the moment, both parties have declined to speak, but that is breaking news for those that are listening in, is that the Takatso SAA deal doesn't look like it's going ahead. But back to our show. Yes, we're looking at financial scams, and we're looking at one in particular where individuals are being told that if you put in 4,500 Rand into a trading account, you can make passive income of 300,000 Rand a month. It's too good to be true, because it really is too good to be true. We're going to be looking at the companies that have been on the other end of these conversations. One of them was a company called Immediate Matrix, which the FSCA issued a warning about last year, and that company has resurfaced again now and is now involved. And on the other side of this is a company called Bankso, which is a broker that operates in South Africa, but coincidentally also sponsors Bafana Bafana and also sponsors Dricus du Plessis, our current UFC champion. So very, very interesting developments around that story. It seems as though there are investigations ongoing within the FSCA around that. But we're going to kick this off, and I'm going to do this on a regular basis where we look at these consumer pieces and consumer education, and we look to help consumers where we can. But it's also important that consumers don't fall for these scams themselves. You can't fall for a scam and then come back and want to have a conversation with Jimmy and Aldrin after the fact, after you've paid over money without doing your research. So we're going to start a consumer awareness campaign, and I'll probably do it with the likes of the FSCA, the regulator in South Africa. Hopefully we can get consumers more educated and more tuned with what's happening around them so they make better decisions and we all don't fall for these things. But we're going to start the conversation by looking at what's happening with Bankso and understanding what investigations have been going on there. We're also going to have a conversation with 91 around their new infrastructure fund. They launched that. Launched a part of that now. It's been ongoing. It's got investments in it now, but they are going a lot bigger with the infrastructure fund now that we know that infrastructure is a core focal point for investment and for the government as well going into this year and beyond. And then we've got a conversation with Growth Point. Interim results came out. I'm speaking to the CEO, Estienne de Klerk, about the 6 months results and seeing how they are looking towards the next 6 months and what we can expect from the property space there. And then because it's Wednesday, we've got our Executive Lounge feature, which means I'm going to be chatting to an executive, and today's executive is the Chief Marketing Officer at the ABSA Group, Sydney Mbele. I'm going to get to know him. He's going to come and join me in studio, and we're going to see what he gets up to when he's not at ABSA. But before that, the markets have had an interesting day. The rand continues to strengthen. Implats and other platinum counters are on the up, and Henko Krier has been keeping an eye on the markets for us. He joins me now to give us a summary of what's been happening. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. Palladium chasing down $1,100 an ounce.
Yes. Hello, Jimmy. Hi, Aldrin. And good evening to all the listeners. Yes, I think the only place where you will find a bit of red on my screen this afternoon is the US markets, because the S&P 500 at this stage 0.1% weaker and the Nasdaq trading 0.5% down. But European stocks, they finished in the green with the FTSE 100 and the DAX finishing 0.2% stronger, and the CAC 40 gained 0.7% today. It went pretty well with the JSE today, especially the resources index, but the JSE's all-share index gained 1% and finished at a level of 74,259 points. The industrial index gained 0.7% and the financial index 0.3% up. And then that resources index almost 3% stronger today and finishing 2.7% stronger. Glencore helped with this because Glencore gained 3.8% today, followed by Anglo and First Rand. They each finished 1.6% up and Prosus 1% stronger, as well as AB InBev, Naspers, Richmond and British American Tobacco. They also each finished 1% stronger at the end of the day. Some of the losers today, some of the companies that lost out quite a bit today. Kumba, again, unfortunately, losing 7.8% today. That's almost 8% weaker. You will also see Nepiroc and Montauk, they each lost 3.5%, and then Netcare and Mondi each finished 1.8% weaker. But back to the companies that had a great day, and it's especially those platinum mines. Northern gained 9.8%, almost 10% today. Then Implats, 9% up. Amplats finished 7% stronger. There's Sibanye-Stillwater, which finished 6.5% up, followed by Harmony and DRD Gold. They each gained 4% today. Then on the commodities market, the price of gold currently $2,171 an ounce. Silver is $24.50. Platinum is now $936, and palladium above $1,000, trading at $1,065 an ounce. The price of Brent crude is currently $83.40 a barrel, and if we have a look at the exchange rate, you'll pay 18 Rand 60 for a US dollar, then 23 Rand and 80 cents for a pound, 20 rand 35 cents for a euro, and 12 rand and 30 cents for an Australian dollar. Bitcoin still maintaining its level of $72,500, and that is 1.4 million rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed this afternoon.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Quite an interesting sight on the markets with resources leading the charge there. And despite this, Kumba seemingly having a third consecutive rough day on the markets. I'm interested to see what's developing there and unfolding there, because we are almost 20% down in less than a week. But we'll dig into these and other stories just after 6. For now, Aldrin, back to you and the team.
Thank you so much, Jimmy Moya. Back again just after 6 o'clock, as you said. We're taking your voice notes on 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. By the way, we totally forgot. We are streaming live on YouTube. We're also live on Facebook, so you can leave your comments there as well as questions that you have on any of the conversations that we are having here on air. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
FC Cole will put their best foot forward to grab maximum points on home soil to run away from the danger zone. Meanwhile, RB Leipzig enjoys every moment in the top half and want to keep climbing to the top. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. FC Cologne versus RB Leipzig on Friday, 15 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Attention filmmakers, are you ready? It's time to showcase the vibrant tapestry of KZN's cultural heritage at the Simon Mabuna Sabela KZN Film and Television Awards, South Africa's ultimate celebration of cinematic excellence. In partnership with the SABC and KZN EDTEA, we champion innovation, paving the way for the future of cinema. This year we go beyond imagination. Cut, edit your 1-minute submissions, because call for entries is now open until the 28th of March 2024. For more information, visit www.kznfilm.co.za or follow us on social platforms. Join the conversation using the hashtag SSA24. KZN Film, our kingdom is your stage.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Okay, let me quickly take some of the comments that we have here on Facebook as well as YouTube. So we've been accused of neglecting the people who are watching and following us on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Apologies for that. By the way, we are streaming live on those platforms. So Tabo, we'll try to do better. We'll really try to do better. This one from Makatleho says that I thought I would see you here during the Mushwesha walk. Unfortunately. Maybe one day. Let's try and see. Maybe next year I'll come through. Teminkosi, thank you so much, says Moy Hemp. Machen is saying that the Polokwane Masters High Court keep on promising that the letter of authority will be given in 21 days, but now it's a month and 2 weeks, and recently they said they must scan the documents before I get the letter. And this is in relation to a voice note that we got a bit earlier on today complaining about the delays at the Masters office. So we'll try and do a follow-up with the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Development, because remember, we spoke to Crispin Piri last year in November, who had said that the minister did come up with a plan to fast-track some of the backlogs that the Master's office is dealing with.
Hi, Aldrin. President Zuma and President Beki did not complete their second terms. As far as I know, I stand to be correct.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Aldrin. Hey, I'm surprised, man, about our justice system here in South Africa. Because when somebody doesn't have money, that case can run maybe 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and then he is guilty, and then he's been sentenced. But somebody with money, the case can drag even for 8 years, 10 years. I'm referring to this guy, the crime he committed last year, but now he already find him guilty, and then he is waiting for a sentence. And then if it's a rich person, the case will drag, some postponement, everything until that case expires.
Alfred
Paswani, Yeah, in Tembisa.
You really have to have the money to be able to do that. Also, sometimes. To get the case to drag on and on and on and on, as long as you can pay the lawyers to do that for you. Look at the Vodacom deal. It's been, 8 years since that case has been ongoing, 18 years since Please Call Me was introduced.
Good afternoon, Adrienne. Thank you very much to the SATU representative. There, I think, is making some valid points. However, I would like us to focus more on the actual issue, which is having some of the convicted educators teaching our kids. What is SATU going to do about it? What is Department of Education is going to do about it? Because it is a problem. There must be solutions. Segwanele from Pretoria.
Hi, Adrian. I'm not sure what your guest is trying to prove. They're explaining the numbers and all of that. The point is that there should be zero tolerance when it comes to employing people with criminal records at schools. It doesn't matter whether it's an administrator or we're talking about people here that are involved in our kids. Come on. It just doesn't make sense that people would be comfortable to have these things and just come here and defend numbers instead of defending why they have those employees there. Sonipa here in Cape Town.
Good afternoon, Adrian. This is Salim. The cancellation of deal is actually not good news, because if you had a private-public partnership, there would be more oversight, there would be more control, and there will be less interference politically. Now that this deal is over and it's gone directly to government ownership, it means that again mismanagement can occur. And SAA is no benefit to the South African poor public. It actually benefits those wealthy people that can afford flying. What people need is actually they need housing, they need jobs, they need service delivery. They don't need SAA.
But they also need jobs, as you say. So I don't know if it's entirely true that SAA only benefits the elite, because you also have cleaners who work for SAA. You also have security officers who work for SAA. You have people who work at the technical, as part of the technical staff that work for SAA as well. So I'm not too entirely sure if the service that is being provided is a service that is being provided to people that can afford, right, to fly. However, though, for the service to be provided, there are other elements and jobs that need to be in play or that are in play for the service to be provided, which also includes, amongst others, the cleaners.
Hi, Aldrin and South Africans. Eddie from Ondalsres and your team as well. Yeah, no, I think it's a good move that this deal must be cancelled, because it was so dodgy, and you ask yourself how many of this kind that Pravin presided on, you know. Yeah, no, it's tough.
#SAFMBTH.
Well, this SAA has come to the end of its voyage. We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we are playing out with Chaka Khan, Ain't Nobody. And our parting shot is from Robert Mangaliso Subukwe, who once said, "The wheel of progress revolves relentlessly, and all the nations of the world take their turn at the field glass of human destiny. Africa will not retreat. Africa will not compromise. Africa will not relent. Africa will not equivocate, and she will be heard. Remember Africa." And Manzini is reading our credits this evening.
Good day, SAFM listeners. SAFM listeners, you are speaking to Manzini. I would like to thank our team, starting with our fantastic Captain Aldrin. Our team, Kanya, Temba, Phineas, Vusi, and Tumi. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. You make our day. Thank you.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Dotsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.